What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to talk about altcoin season and when I believe altcoin season is going to begin. We're going to back this up with factual chart data along with macro fundamental data, and we're going to use fundamental monetary policy data to show you when exactly altcoin season will begin. Now, typically, when you see altcoin season videos or you see altcoin season posts on social media, whether that be YouTube or X or anywhere for that matter, you see a lot of analysts who have been in crypto for a long time and may have even been through multiple cycles continuously try to compare their charts to the previous cycles. But the big mistake that they make and why they've been wrong the entire time in prematurely calling altcoin season is because they're not going further. They're not using the current macro environment and monetary policy as a way of finding out what kind of market conditions we are in that will support altcoin season. Now, I am of the belief, many of you already know this if you follow me, that monetary policy and the overall macro sentiment is the key driver to getting altcoin season. And when I say altcoin season, let me define what I exactly mean by that. Altcoin season is when we see Bitcoin dominance durably heading lower consistently, breaking all of its key moving averages, breaking all of its key major supports, and heading down sharply and durably. And at the same time, you'll see the others dominance charts in altcoin pairing charts against Bitcoin durably outperform Bitcoin. So, I do believe, based off this video, and I'm going to show you, that altcoin season is getting closer. And it should be starting, could be starting within months. Definitely at some point this year. So the first chart that you see here, and the reason why this chart is so great, because one, it's a chart, it's technical analysis, but at the same time, what we have overlaid with this chart, that being the blue line, is the Fed's balance sheet. The Fed's balance sheet is a result of quantitative tightening and quantitative easing. Quantitative easing is when the Fed is actively purchasing securities, right, or treasuries, and adding them to their balance sheet. Quantitative tightening is the opposite. For example, Jerome Powell just announced the other day that the Fed is going to be decreasing and slowing the pace of selling of treasury bonds off of their balance sheet from 25 billion to 5 billion. That is quantitative tightening, but a slowdown to it, right? So think of it very simple, right? One is quantitative easing is the process of purchasing. Quantitative tightening is the process of selling of the Federal Reserve's balance sheet, which in turn is the balance sheet of the United States, right? So just to keep it nice and simple. Now, you probably are wondering, if you've never heard of these terms, like, what is Kev talking about right now? Like, he's supposed to be talking about altcoin season. Like, the video's title is altcoin season is coming. Well, let me explain to you exactly the correlation between the two. As you can see, back in 2015, this is the others dominance chart. So what the others dominance chart is, this is the altcoin market excluding the top 10 altcoins dominance over Bitcoin. So it's altcoins dominance minus the top 10 altcoins over Bitcoin. And as you can see, we'll start fresh. In 2015, this orange circle represents the beginning of a major bullish cycle in altcoins, right? And as you can see, the blue line is representative of the Fed's balance sheet. And as you can see, there was some periods of maybe some QE, some periods of maybe a little bit of QT, but overall the Fed's balance sheet was flat, right? And the reason why the Fed's balance sheet was flat during this time is because even during this period of time, we were coming out of the financial crisis in 2008, and the economy and growth were stagnant. So the Fed was not doing any QT, but they were even doing a little bit of QE in the early 2012 to 13 era. But overall, the Fed's balance sheet was pretty stagnant because we were in a stagnant period of growth, right? This provided the layout. There was enough, just the QT not happening alone was enough to produce an altcoin's outperformance over Bitcoin via altcoin season, right? As you could see, you have a flat balance sheet, you get a run up in altcoins, you get a true altcoin season, right? And this altcoin season, obviously topped out in May of 2017. Actually, if you really want to be precise, it topped out here with via a double top in April of 2018. But what you're going to notice here in April of 2018 is look what happened. And I'll explain to you what happened. When Trump took office in 2016, we started to see expansion in the economy for the first time in really since, early 2000s, right? Because remember, the post-financial crisis, we had a very stagnant economy for roughly 8 years, even a little bit longer than that. The Obama years were recovery years, but we never really saw recovery. We saw very flat GDP. We saw a lot of hesitancy in the economy. Consumers were not willing to, take out loans, right? Even though rates were at zero, there was a lot of hesitancy in the market, right? People were trying to get back on their feet. So when Trump took office in 2016, we started to see expansion in the economy. We started to see a Fed that was saying, okay, we're starting to see more loans occur. We're starting to see expansion. Let's start raising rates a little bit. So the Fed started raising rates by 0.25 basis points right around about a year after Trump took office. And they also started some runoff of the balance sheet. As you can see with these two circles, they're correlated. Soon as the Fed began quantitative tightening, right? And they started it right around the end of 2017, the beginning of 2018, we saw the top in the others dominance chart against Bitcoin, right? It started you can call this a bear market, right? And this is the 3-week time frame, by the way. So the 3-week time frame, each candle is 3 weeks. Now, as you can see, in 2019, right, the Fed started to end QT and started QE again, right? So that wasn't flat like it was over here. They started to actually ease. They started to purchase, right? And what did that cause? Literally at the exact same time that quantitative easing began, the altcoin market's dominance found a bottom against Bitcoin, right? So we start to head up, okay? You can see the correlation. You're starting to begin an altcoin season style rally where altcoins are outperforming Bitcoin. And then this right here, this outlier is COVID, right? This is the COVID crash. So we're going to kind of ignore this part of it, right? Because this is just, we all remember that, right? It was everything crashed. So it didn't matter about what was dominating over the other. Everything crashed. So that's just how it went. But as you can see, once the dust settled on that crash and people were sitting at home and no one was working and the economy was shut down, the Fed started the largest period in history of quantitative easing the markets have ever seen. And as you can see, that also marked a bottom in others' dominance over Bitcoin. The QE represented an massive altcoin season, which we saw all the way until basically the end of 2021, where altcoins had a massive rally against Bitcoin during that 2020, late 2020 to 2020, late 2021 time period. There was actually 2 separate rallies, if you remember correctly. There was a rally in late 2020 and early 2021 where we had a massive alt season. Then we had a lull in the summertime and then had another last push altcoin season where a lot of new altcoins that were created in early 2021 had massive rallies, like Shiba Inu, for example, right? Doge had its huge rally in May of 2021. and then Shiba was created and it had its massive rally later that year. So this is kind of representative of that as an example. But the point that I'm making is you can see QE, massive rally, right? Now look what happened. Another perfect example. Soon as the quantitative easing ended, which was right here, we saw the top occur in others' dominance against Bitcoin. And when I say others' dominance, I'll repeat, this is the altcoin market's dominance over Bitcoin, right? So we saw a top occur soon as quantitative tightening began. And why did quantitative tightening begin? Well, let me give you a lesson on that. In 2022, as you all remember, we had the word transitory going around as to why inflation was so high. And what that basically means is the Fed believed and the Treasury believed that inflation was transitory due to the COVID pandemic and supply chains being shut down. They didn't think that it was due to potentially all of the money printing that occurred during this time of easing. They were wrong. It wasn't just supply chains. It wasn't just transitory. It was due to a lot of the money printing that occurred, right? Now, as you can see, in 2022, we all know what happened. The Fed started the fastest pace of rate hikes this country has ever seen. And they also started the fastest pace of quantitative tightening this country has ever seen. And because of that, you have seen the longest and worst bear market in altcoins history. So let me repeat that. When I say what I just said, and people think, wow, this cycle feels different, you are correct. The cycle is different. This has been the longest period of time where altcoins have underperformed Bitcoin. And the reason being is because we went through, since 2022, the fastest, most aggressive rate hiking cycle the country has ever seen since the 1970s. And we have seen the largest runoff of the Fed's balance sheet in history. And look what happened. Orange circle begins at the same time. And ever since then, you see $75 billion a month, $60 billion a month of, mortgage-backed security selling and treasury bond selling causes the altcoin market and overall sentiment in the economy to not be favorable enough to altcoins to produce an altcoin season, which is why you've seen on the others dominance chart here, altcoins have been in a bear market against Bitcoin for almost 3 straight years now. It'll be 3 years in June, which, yes, when you feel that, oh my God, why is this not happening? Why is the guy on Twitter's chart not playing out as it did in the last 2 cycles? Well, this is why, guys. This is what I'm trying to teach you. It's that it's not just the charts. It's never been about the charts. It's about the monetary policy in the United States. It's about the current macroeconomic environment that produces the proper sentiment and produces the ease of gaining capital by consumers and businesses in order for them to expand, in order for them to take on more risk. When businesses and consumers are able to take on more risk because rates are lower and QE is happening, this is what causes riskier assets to then start to outperform higher capped, safer assets like Bitcoin. Okay, so do you see how this works? Money becomes more available, rates are low, people take on more risk. Risk assets go higher. You have quantitative tightening since 2022. You have interest rate hiking since 2022. Altcoins are in a bear market against Bitcoin. So now you're seeing the absolute perfect timed correlation between altcoin season and monetary policy. I'm glad that I was able to mention that. Now let's get to where we are now. From a chart perspective, you can see that others' dominance is potentially forming a double bottom at the macro golden pocket, right? As we can see. Now, we don't know for sure whether or not this is a legitimate double bottom because we still have quantitative tightening occurring. However, there's been a major update, and it's why I made this video. This video is altcoin season is coming, right? The Fed just decreased their level of quantitative tightening drastically when it comes to treasuries. they've decreased their runoff of treasuries from 25 billion to 5 billion. And back in May of last year, they decreased it from 50 billion to 25 billion. So that means we've seen almost an 85 to 90% reduction in quantitative tightening in treasuries. Okay, so that's one aspect of QT. However, they're still running off their MBSs, their mortgage-backed securities, at the same rate. They have not slowed that down, and they actually plan on continuing that QT until mortgage-backed securities are completely off of their balance sheet. This is what I would tell you, though. Bringing the treasury runoff down to 5 billion should, in my opinion, be enough for altcoins to start to outperform Bitcoin at some point soon. And the reason why I say that is because with what I believe inflation to be coming down, if we look at energy prices are collapsing across the board. Energy prices are a massive driver of inflation. If we look at trueflation data and we look at other inflation data, we are seeing inflation start to really come down. Trueflation at the current moment has inflation at 1.7%. We have core PCE coming out tomorrow. I have a funny feeling that's going to come in lower than expected, maybe in line. It just depends on what the expectations are. I do believe on a month-over-month basis, it will be lower than what it has been, which is the Fed's preferred measure for inflation. So if we tie that in together, lower inflation numbers over the next 6 months, right? A massive slowdown in quantitative tightening, even though it's not over yet, but a massive slowdown in quantitative tightening. And we are projected to have a rate cut in June, potentially one in July, which will be heavily dependent on the inflation data. With that also being said, while we have this massive slowdown in quantitative tightening, there are some signs that are starting to show that bank reserves are no longer abundant. Now, the term abundant and ample are very important here because this is terms that they use at the Fed to determine whether or not it's now safe to end quantitative tightening, right? When I say bank reserves, banks partake in what's called overnight lending. And overnight lending becomes expensive over time for the banks, in which case this depletes their reserves, right? And the Fed does not want that to occur because if that starts to show signs of cracking, it will cause the bond market to start to act erratic, which would cause fear to enter into the market. This happened back in 2018, right? I don't know if you guys remember, but this happened once before. So the Fed is going to end QT not in relation to inflation, not in relation to the labor market, but in relation to bank reserves no longer being abundant. And I believe that is going to probably occur between now and June or July, where we'll see probably a complete stoppage of QT. And you see they're preparing for that. They're basically telling you we're ending QT soon, but they're just not ending it yet. With all of that combined, now from a chart perspective, from a technical analysis perspective, double bottoming on the others dominance chart at the macro golden pocket, I believe you now officially, for the first time in almost 5 full years, you're on the brink of having all of the necessary ingredients at our Michelin star crypto restaurant to have the altcoin season that you also desire, that we all sort of deserve, right? This has been the longest altcoins bear market against Bitcoin in history, so your feelings are correct. The cycle has been different. However, if inflation data comes in lower, which I expect it to, if the labor market remains perfectly fine, which it is, 4.1% unemployment is great, and QT is going to end due to bank reserves no longer being abundant, we are setting up at this macro golden pocket, pretty ironic how that works, isn't it? For the perfect setup for altcoin season to begin. And I think altcoin season is not going to begin very sharply and aggressively. I think we're going to ease into it, sort of how the monetary policy is going to ease slowly. Right? It's going to catch a lot of people off guard. It's not just going to explode maybe overnight, but we're going to ease into it just because of the fact that we're slowly easing monetary policy. When you have slowly easing monetary policy, I think you're going to have a slowly developing altcoin season. And I think, again, it's going to catch a lot of people off guard, but this is why I'm making this video, to prepare you for it. Okay? Now, another chart that I want to look at also is the Bitcoin dominance chart. And the reason why I want to look at Bitcoin dominance is because it's just another confirmation of how quantitative easing and tightening, basically the Fed's balance sheet, is tied to altcoin season. For example, over here back in 2017, we saw a flat balance sheet with a little bit of QT and a little bit of QE, right? There was some QT and QE back in this period of time. Like I said before, when Trump took office, we started to see some expansion. But overall, in terms of the market sentiment, it was much different. Rates were lower than they are now. We didn't just go through a massive rate hiking cycle. We were still in what was felt to be an easing period. This laid the runway for Bitcoin dominance to see a top, right? Now, as you can see here, we had our altcoin season, right? Flat balance sheet, relatively easing style economy in monetary policy. We get a massive altcoin season. As you can see here, what happened, right? Look at this. Soon as we began quantitative tightening at a faster pace in 2018, Bitcoin dominance bottomed. I repeat, quantitative tightening begins, Bitcoin dominance bottoms. Bitcoin dominance heads higher for almost 2 years. Look what happens. QE begins. Bitcoin dominance tops soon as QE begins. You see this correlation, how incredible it is? I'll keep going. You get a major move down that lasted months in Bitcoin dominance, which resulted in a massive altcoins outperformance. And then we had COVID occur, right? We had that same outlier occur. We'll go skip to here in 2020, late 2020. What happened? Bitcoin dominance had to move up because of, the COVID crash. Everyone, obviously, risk assets got pounded during the COVID crash. But look what happened. More QE begins in late 2020. Bitcoin dominance tops, makes a major move down, which was the beginning of altcoin season again. You're seeing the correlation, guys. I know it. I don't have to explain it too much, right? You see it by now. Monetary policy is directly correlated to altcoin season. Point blank, period. Okay, let's fast forward. Quantitative easing ends, quantitative tightening begins, Bitcoin dominance finds its lows. It consolidates for a little while. Once QT starts to speed up and inflation hits 9% in the United States, you see a durable low in Bitcoin dominance. Ever since that low has occurred in Bitcoin dominance and QT has begun at a fast pace, we have seen a bull market in Bitcoin dominance. Ever since then, the longest, I should say, bull market in history in Bitcoin dominance. All because of the fact that we've had higher rates for longer and we've had quantitative tightening for longer, right? That's, again, to your feelings of why is everything taking so long? Well, it's because monetary policy is taking so long, okay? So, again, now that we have this massive slowdown starting on April 2nd, or basically the first week of April, in quantitative tightening, we have a couple of inflation reports coming up to which I believe are going to be lower than expected or just lower in general. And we have a rate cut coming in a couple months, maybe sooner, we'll see. I believe we're now setting up the recipe to see Bitcoin dominance potentially top soon. However, we're not at that point yet, right? That's why I say altcoin season is coming. It's closer than it's ever been. And it's backed up by not only chart analysis, but macro fundamental analysis backed up by monetary policy, right? So the moment that we see this blue line, which is the Fed's balance sheet, start to carve out and flatten out, we will see Bitcoin dominance top. Until that happens, Bitcoin dominance is likely going to trade sideways or even just slowly grind higher like it's been doing. But we are getting close. 25 billion down to 5 billion runoff. Bank reserves potentially leaving abundance stage and heading to ample, which means that they're going to potentially end QT as a whole. We are within a few months of this blue line flattening out in this Bitcoin dominance based off history and others dominance bottoming out and Bitcoin dominance topping out. So like I said, by some point either in late spring or the summertime, this move is going to start showing itself and altcoin season will likely begin. Another chart that I want to show you is, this is a very important chart. Others, the others chart, total others, right? So this is, and we're going to take off the Fed's balance sheet and we're going to overlay the DXY, okay? And let me just align things properly here so that you can see. Here we go. Okay, perfect. This is exactly how I want it to look. Move this right here. Now, as you can see, we're going to pull this in relations to the DXY. This is the total others chart. This is every single altcoin in the altcoin market minus the top 10. So we looked at others dominance. Now we're looking at total others, which is just the altcoin market cap, right? So it's actual USD performance, right? Not just its dominance. As you can see, we have the COVID outlier. We'll just eliminate that right off the bat. We had the COVID occurred, DXY saw a major drop, altcoin season basically began. We're going to look back at Trump's previous administration. As you can see, when Trump was elected, the DXY formed a major low, right? This is in the post-halving, right? Post-halving. Look at the similar. You could probably already see the similarities in where I'm going with this. You had a major low in the DXY and then a major rally. This coincided with a major correction in the altcoins market cap that lasted months. Then you saw a major high in the DXY when Trump began his administration. And then, as you can see, that major high in the DXY correlated, again, with other monetary policy, major altcoin rally. Major altcoin rally. As you can see, we're seeing something very similar play out with the DXY and the altcoin market cap. It is eerily similar. I mean, from a chart perspective, this is incredible. But obviously, with DXY overlaid, this is macro factors that are affecting the price of altcoins. Post-halving, Trump gets actually right before the election, you see a major low in the DXY, so a little bit off on the timing. But you see this major rally occur, right? You get this major correctional phase in the altcoin market, as you can see up here, right? Major correctional phase during this major rally in the altcoin market. Looks very similar to here, right? Look how much similar this looks. And now you're seeing this major high in the DXY, similar to here. I believe that with monetary policy and lining up, QT slowing down and potentially ending within the next couple months, inflation coming in lower, interest rates coming down, right? You're seeing the DXY start to move down. I believe there is a strong chance that we are in a very similar spot in the altcoin market as we were in 2017, right? Now, this is just not a fractal backed up by some chart data from last cycle. This is hard facts, chart data compared with macro fundamentals, okay? You can see the similarities here. Save the chart for yourself. Post it. Make sure you give credit to me if you want. But again, you can see the similarities here, guys. You can see the similarities here. I'm making this video to tell you that macro fundamentals and monetary policy are starting to give us the ingredients we need to see an altcoin season. We're not there yet, but we are getting very close to the point where I feel it's important to start really talking about it, okay? Now, the last chart that I want to go over is the USDT dominance chart. I've probably been one of the pioneers when it comes to tracking the USDT dominance chart and its inverse correlation to crypto. The USDT dominance chart has been the #1 best guide for tracking this entire bull run and for tracking the bear market. It has been my greatest second pair of eyes, I'd like to call it, in terms of knowing what to do in this cycle. Okay, but we're going to keep it short because this chart is very self-explanatory. As you can see, we made a major low back in March of 2024. If you all were here before March of 2024, we had a major rally from January to March, right? everything shot up very aggressively. We came down to the part, you guys know me, you've heard me if you follow me on Twitter, 3.7% on USDT dominance. That's the level to break. It always has been. We didn't break it back in March of 2024, and we had a major correction. As you can see, we all remember this correction if you were here last year. This major correction saw altcoins drop 65%, 70%. Bitcoin had a big correction from 73 to 47K. But as you can see, via these trend lines, right, that eventually USDT dominance topped out. We started to see massive sell demand candles, and then it saw its next major leg lower, back down to 3.70%. This helped Bitcoin go from 73K to 110K. And then altcoins, a lot of strong altcoins made new highs, right? We went down to the 3.70% level. I was saying rigorously at this level, we were at 106K. I kept saying nonstop, everyone was thinking we were going significantly higher. Oh my God, this is it. This is the beginning. And I was cautiously warning everybody. I said until until USDT dominance breaks that 3.70% level, and Bitcoin durably breaks above 106.8K, that we need to be wary that the market can go into a major correctional phase again. Well, let alone we double bottomed at 3.70% and bang, started to head significantly higher again. Now, as you can see, we've hit these trend lines again and the macro golden pocket and saw a massive sell demand candle on the weekly time frame for USDT dominance. In our Patreon, my Patreon, we were doing a lot of accumulating of altcoins, long-term swing spot positions on altcoins on this major wick higher that really was a major fake out. A lot of people capitulated here. And this massive weekly sell demand candle, in my opinion, should be the beginning, as we can see we're seeing follow through now, of another move higher basically for the crypto market. Now where that move higher will take us, in my opinion, it's going to, we're going to have to watch and see. But overall, the USDT dominance chart, what I'm looking for is a move back down to this major trend line of support at 4.42%. If we break that 4.42% level down here and monetary policy starts to line up, I believe you will see this coincide with the beginning of durable altcoin outperformance. So again, monetary policy lining up. We have our others dominance chart, we have the Bitcoin dominance chart, and then we have the total others chart, all lined up with monetary policy and macro fundamental factors. Then we'll use the USDT dominance chart in this 4.42% level. A breakdown of that will most likely line up with lower rates, an end to QT, or even more slowdown to QT, to the point where the risk appetite in the market becomes so that people start to park money in altcoins rather than Bitcoin, which will send Bitcoin dominance going lower, and you'll start to get your altcoin season. Okay, so I wanted to make this video for you guys. It ran a little longer than I thought it would, but I thought it was extremely important to show you that, yes, I believe we are on the verge of a major altcoin outperformance based off facts in the charts and monetary policy overlaid on those charts that I just showed you via the Fed's balance sheet and interest rates and the DXY. So I hope this video was informative for you. I think we're getting very close, guys. I definitely want to see USDT dominance break this 200 EMA on the weekly. In the short term, I think we should still be cautious, right? We're not out of the woods yet. I've been talking about the correctional period that we're in. We need to see a 3-day MACD cross to the upside in order to feel that the correction is over. We haven't done that yet, but I think we're getting close. We do have core PCE tomorrow, which would be major report. It's the Fed's preferred measure of inflation, so I will be watching that very closely. And remember, altcoin season is likely coming very soon. It's going to catch a lot of people off guard. We're finally getting to the point where we're not seeing the altcoin season posts anymore. People are giving up. People have left the space. The sentiment is terrible, and that's exactly at the moment when you're going to see the monetary policy start to favor altcoin outperformance. So again, I hope this video is, insightful for you. I hope you guys enjoy it. and definitely learn from it, right? Learn from this video. It's not all about just the charts. It's the charts and the monetary policy combined together will give you the best ingredients you can to do the best possible analysis you can do in order to give you the best insight as to what the market is going to do. You guys have a great night. I hope you enjoyed the video. Have a good one. Peace.